Whisper Sleep Studio presents The Woman Who Slept for 7 Years. Welcome to Whisper Sleep Studio, where every story drifts between the edge of dream and memory, where voices soften and the night listens. Tonight, I'll tell you about a woman who once closed her eyes for what seemed like a nap and did not wake for 7 long years. Her name was Eleanor Merrick, and though her body rested beneath the white hush of hospital lights, her mind wandered somewhere between time and sleep, a place where the living and the dreaming quietly touched. It began in the autumn of 1962, in a small seaside town where the days smelled of salt and rain. Eleanor was 32, a piano teacher who loved quiet things: window light, teacups, the sound of her students laughing off key. One evening, she walked home after her last lesson, stopped by the bakery for a loaf of honey bread, waved to the same lamplighter who always nodded back, and stepped inside her small apartment with the calm of someone who believed tomorrow would be ordinary. But that night, she had a headache she couldn't explain. She wrote a few lines in her journal. "It feels as if the world is humming too loud tonight." Then she closed her eyes. By morning, she was still asleep. At first, doctors thought it was exhaustion, then influenza, then something rarer, a deep neural sleep, a state the specialists described as profound unconscious preservation. Her heart was steady, her breathing soft, yet she did not stir, not once. The hospital moved her to a quiet ward, where the nurses whispered that she looked like a painting, peaceful, pale, untouched by time. Her husband Samuel came every morning with a new book, reading aloud in hopes that his voice would reach her somewhere inside that endless dream. Days became months, seasons changed outside her window, snow, spring bloom, then rain again. But inside, the same stillness. The doctors said her body responded faintly to sound, that sometimes her eyes moved beneath their lids as if watching something. No one knew what she saw. Samuel began keeping his own journal beside hers, writing daily letters to a woman who could not read them. "Today the sea looked like glass," he wrote once, "and I imagined you walking on it, careful not to disturb the reflections." The nurses said he whispered her name differently each time, sometimes hopeful, sometimes broken. Years passed, and even hope began to sleep. Then, one spring afternoon in the 5th year of her sleep, a nurse named Lillian noticed Eleanor's hand twitch, barely, like a pulse in the air. At first she thought it was her imagination, but then a faint movement again, fingers curling inward as though holding something invisible. The doctors recorded it, intrigued but cautious. Nothing more happened for weeks. Still, that moment awakened something in everyone, a quiet vigil of faith. Lillian began reading softly to her at night, poetry, lullabies, small stories of the outside world. Sometimes she placed a seashell near Eleanor's ear, letting her hear the hush of the ocean. And though Eleanor never moved, her pulse would quicken ever so slightly, as though the sound reminded her of home. Then, in the 6th year, the dreams began to leak outward. The nurses reported strange occurrences, a piano faintly playing through the hospital intercom at midnight, though no one was near the music room. A scent of honey bread in the hallway, though the cafeteria was closed. One night, Lillian swore she heard a woman's voice humming a melody she couldn't identify, soft, fragile, and far away. When she entered Eleanor's room, the air smelled faintly of rain. Doctors dismissed these as coincidences, but Samuel didn't. He said, "She's trying to find her way back." So he began to bring pieces of her life to her bedside, her old metronome, ticking softly beside the bed, her music sheets, even her favorite scarf that still carried a hint of her perfume. And perhaps the strangest thing, a small diary they found inside her desk, filled with words written in uneven handwriting, as if between dreams. The first entry was dated months after she had already fallen asleep. "It's quiet here," it said. "I can still hear the piano, but it sounds underwater. Sometimes I hear Samuel reading to me through the walls." The doctors insisted it was impossible. A coincidence, a leftover note from before her illness. But the handwriting was different, lighter, more uncertain. There were several pages of such entries, written in faint pencil, describing places that didn't exist. A garden where clocks bloom like flowers, a river that hums with names, a door made of sound. Each entry ended with the same line: "When I remember how to wake, I'll bring the rain with me." By the 7th year, the hospital had grown used to her silence. Only Lillian still believed. On the anniversary of Eleanor's first day asleep, Lillian sat beside her and whispered, "If you're still somewhere in there, the world's waiting." That night, the lights in the corridor flickered, not out of fear, but like someone breathing between them. The intercom crackled, releasing a single note, middle C, the same note Eleanor used to begin every lesson. Then slowly, her eyelids trembled. The monitor beside her hummed faster. And after 7 years, Eleanor took one soft breath, as though surfacing from deep water, and opened her eyes. The first thing she whispered was, "How long have I been gone?" Lillian cried before she could answer. Samuel was called immediately. He arrived running, holding her old scarf, the same one he'd kept by his bed for 7 winters. Eleanor looked at him quietly, then smiled with a strange calm. "I've seen you every night," she said. "You read me home." For weeks, the doctors studied her, calling it the longest spontaneous recovery in recorded history. But what fascinated them most was her memory, not of the hospital, but of a place beyond dreaming. She described it in slow whispers. It wasn't dark, more like a sound that glowed. Time didn't move, it floated. I met people there, faces I didn't know but somehow loved. They told me to remember the rain. When asked what that meant, she said she wasn't sure, only that when she dreamed, she always heard rain falling, even when everything else was still. Eleanor recovered steadily, though she often paused mid-conversation, listening to something no one else could hear. She said it was the world catching up. On the day she finally returned home, she stood at her old piano and pressed a single key. The note echoed softly, exactly the same tone that had once hummed through the hospital intercom. Lillian was there to hear it. "You found your way back," she whispered. Eleanor smiled faintly. "I never left," she said. "I just forgot how to wake." Afterward, Eleanor tried to return to teaching but found she could no longer read sheet music the same way. The notes felt alive, almost speaking. She began composing instead, simple melodies that made listeners feel drowsy and at peace. Her first piece was titled 7 Years of Sleep. It became quietly famous among musicians for its strange effect. People who listened often reported vivid dreams afterward, dreams of rain, gardens, and ticking clocks. Some even claimed they saw her in those dreams, smiling gently beside a window. Samuel kept all her diaries locked in a small wooden box. But when he died years later, Lillian found one last entry in Eleanor's handwriting, dated only weeks before Eleanor herself passed peacefully in her sleep. It read, "If you ever hear a piano at midnight, don't be afraid. It's just me, practicing how to wake again." And now, as you lie here, letting your own breath slow, imagine her, Eleanor, the woman who slept for 7 years, walking through a soft garden of sound, the rain whispering her name, her fingertips tracing each drop like a note. Perhaps in her dream, she is still teaching us that even in silence, the soul remembers its song. And maybe, somewhere between this world and the next, someone is reading softly to her, just as you are listening now. This is Whisper Sleep Studio, where forgotten stories breathe again. After Eleanor opened her eyes for the first time in 7 years, the world outside seemed softer, almost fragile, as though it had grown thinner while she slept, and yet somehow brighter, illuminated from within by the memory of everything she had carried in her long journey through unconsciousness. The nurses who had watched her, the gentle tick of the monitors, the whisper of Samuel reading beside her bed, all faded into a distant hum. And in that hum, she felt a weight lift from her chest that she could not have named while awake. And for days she would lie quietly, tracing patterns on the sheets, listening to the subtle creaks of the old hospital building and to the distant city sounds that filtered through her window, realizing that while her body had remained still, her mind had wandered farther than any human could chart, moving through dreamscapes made of time itself, where clocks bent like ribbons, rivers ran backward, and gardens bloomed with impossible colors that shimmered and hummed under a sky that never darkened completely. In those dream years, she had met other souls, some familiar, some entirely unknown, who taught her that sleep could be a bridge, not just a pause, that consciousness was more fluid than anyone had ever imagined, and that memories, even those she had not lived yet, could be felt like whispers against her skin, pressing her to remember them, pressing her to carry them into the waking world. And now that she had returned, every sound, every breath, every touch felt layered with the textures of those 7 years, so that even a simple drop of water in the sink made her pause, marveling at its shape, its sound, its fleeting weight. While outside, Samuel would walk quietly along the garden paths, sometimes calling her name, sometimes silent, feeling the rhythm of her return like a tide settling against the shore. She began to recount fragments of her dream world to Lillian, who would sit with her for hours, scribbling notes in notebooks, capturing the names of impossible flowers, the smell of invisible seas, the taste of rain that carried memories she couldn't name. And Eleanor spoke of things that defied physics, of staircases that led nowhere yet connected everything, of voices that spoke in lullabies and riddles, of children who played in clouds made of soft light. And all the while, her tone was calm, melodic, almost hypnotic, as if her words themselves were part of the music she had carried inside her for so long. Neighbors would sometimes peek into her room and feel a strange calm settle over them, a drowsy peace that made their eyes heavy, as if hearing Eleanor describe her dreamscape invited them to enter it for just a moment. And sometimes she would close her eyes mid-sentence, smile faintly, and whisper, "I'm just listening now," as though the real world had become a listening post for the world she had inhabited in sleep. As the months passed, Eleanor began to explore her own home again, running her fingers along walls she had not touched for years, noticing the way sunlight pooled differently in corners, how the kettle whistled more softly than she remembered, and the music room, once her sanctuary, became a gateway. She would sit at the piano for hours, letting her fingers drift across the keys without intention, each note producing a resonance she could feel not only with her ears but with the entirety of her being. And soon she realized that the melodies she created could coax images from her memory of the dream world. A faint glimmer of a river, the scent of the strange flowers, the hum of a garden that existed somewhere beyond the boundaries of sleep. And those melodies, played softly at night, had the effect of guiding others into the same hypnotic peace she had felt, like a gentle tide brushing over a hidden shore. And Samuel would sometimes listen, eyes closed, feeling the air itself vibrate with things he could not name, yet understanding them intuitively, as though Eleanor had become a bridge, not just to her own experience, but to a universal quiet that anyone who would sit and breathe with her could feel. Eleanor's health stabilized, but her body had aged differently, as if 7 years of stilled time had polished her bones and softened her features, leaving her skin translucent in the right light, a little fragile, a little ethereal, and every small motion, turning a page, sipping tea, placing her hand on the piano, was deliberate, mindful, reverent, a meditation of presence that she had learned to value more than anything in her life before sleep. Friends who had visited before she fell ill returned cautiously, unsure how to meet someone who had traveled through time in the most intimate way possible, and Eleanor greeted them softly, sometimes recounting tiny mundane details of the hospital corridor that now seemed monumental, a tile pattern that reminded her of sunlight on water, the smell of antiseptic mingled with rain, the way the wind stirred the leaves against the window. And while these might have seemed trivial to others, she spoke of them with the awe of a traveler returning to a familiar city that had transformed while she was away. Over time, she began keeping a new diary, this one in the waking world, but infused with the cadence and lyricism of her dream life, recording small phenomena and tiny observations as if each could unlock the secret of her journey through sleep. And in the margins, she would sometimes sketch faint, looping patterns, swirls of air, circles of light, maps of invisible gardens, things no one could fully interpret, but that conveyed the way she had perceived 7 years of experience compressed into the mind of someone who had remained physically still. It became clear that Eleanor had a profound understanding of the inner life of dreams, of how consciousness could stretch and contract, of how sound, scent, and touch could echo across dimensions of time. She began to teach small groups quietly, people curious about sleep, meditation, and dream work. But her teaching was unlike anything known. She did not lecture, she whispered, guiding them to listen to the subtle sounds around them, to the rustle of a page, the hum of a kettle, the soft thump of a heartbeat, encouraging her students to sense the life that existed in stillness, to feel the vibrancy of a paused world. And in these sessions, Some students would drift into sleep and report glimpses of extraordinary places, gardens, and rivers that were neither here nor there, as if Eleanor's presence created a bridge from the physical world to the dream space she had inhabited so fully. Samuel watched all of this with awe and gratitude, realizing that the woman who had once been fragile in the hospital bed was now a living vessel of wonder, a quiet miracle who had returned carrying 7 years of unseen worlds in her gaze, her voice, her touch, and even in her silence. Nights would often find Eleanor walking in the garden beside her house, moonlight pooling on the wet grass, listening to the soft hum of insects, to the whisper of the wind, to the distant echo of a train horn, each sound resonating with the subtle harmonics of her internal world. And sometimes she would pause, close her eyes, and smile faintly, acknowledging a presence that was not there for others to see, a companion of dreams that had stayed with her for 7 long years. And in those moments, anyone who chanced to glance through the window might feel an inexplicable peace, as if the universe had pressed a finger gently to their heart and whispered a secret they could not fully name. Eleanor wrote letters to those she had met in her dreamscapes, the strange, fleeting faces and voices that had guided her. Letters she never sent. Letters that were exercises in remembering the textures of a life lived in between sleep and wakefulness. And sometimes, when she read them aloud in the quiet of her room, her voice would carry with it a faint echo, a resonance that seemed to linger in the air even after the words ended, as though the dream world itself had folded into the room, soft and warm, inviting anyone who would listen to share in its gentle hush. Through it all, she never lost her humility, never boasted of the impossible journey she had survived, but carried it lightly like a secret melody that only those attuned to the faintest sounds could hear. And in this way, Eleanor Marek became a quiet legend, not because of the spectacle of her 7-year sleep, but because she showed that even in silence, even in stilled time, the human spirit could wander, dream, and ultimately return, bringing a gift of calm wonder to the waking world. And so, as you lie here tonight, letting your own breath slow, imagine Eleanor walking softly through her garden, listening to the rain she had long carried in her mind, touching the leaves, pressing a finger to the soft soil, feeling the pulse of life beneath her feet, knowing that even in sleep there is learning, even in stillness there is motion, and even in silence there is a voice, just as you are hearing now, carried through the gentle cadence of this story, whispered into your mind, into your ears, into your dreams. As the years went on after Eleanor's return, she settled into a rhythm that seemed both ordinary and extraordinary, moving through her days with deliberate care, yet carrying the weightless wisdom of 7 years spent in a place that defied time and logic. And though her body had aged in measured increments, her spirit moved freely, flowing like water over unseen rocks, brushing against memories no one else could touch. And in the quiet moments before dawn, she would sit at her piano, letting her fingers wander across the keys, tracing melodies that felt like whispers from the dream world she had inhabited, melodies that did not belong to the waking world, yet seemed to belong everywhere at once, as if she had plucked them directly from the fabric of the universe. And those who heard her music reported a strange tranquility, a sensation of weightless drifting, of floating between sleep and wakefulness. And Eleanor would close her eyes while playing, imagining herself back in that ethereal garden where rivers sang in forgotten languages and flowers opened to sound rather than light. And sometimes she could see faces, faint, blurred, smiling, friends she had met in that long slumber, guiding her through corridors made of mist. And though she could not name them, she carried their kindness, their laughter, their quiet wisdom into every note she played, every breath she took, every word she whispered into journals and letters that she often folded into small envelopes she kept tucked beneath the piano, never sending them, yet knowing that the act of writing them somehow tethered her dream life to the waking world, a subtle bridge of consciousness that allowed her to remain both present and elsewhere simultaneously. Samuel, ever patient, ever devoted, would sit in the armchair across from the piano, listening to her music drift softly through the room, feeling a profound sense of awe at the woman who had returned from a journey no one else could follow. and he often wondered what it meant that she had been gone for 7 years, yet remembered him so vividly, remembered the soft inflections of his voice, the scent of the bread he had brought to her bedside, the way he had held her hand during long nights of quiet vigil. And though he never questioned the reality of her experience, he sometimes caught himself imagining her in that dream world even now, walking through gardens of impossible light, laughing softly with unseen companions, and when he dared to speak aloud to her about it, Eleanor would merely smile, her eyes luminous, and whisper, "I am both here and there, but always listening." A phrase that carried weight and comfort, mystery and clarity. And in her home, others began to notice subtle phenomena that could not be easily explained. The faint scent of rain indoors when the weather was dry, the soft sound of piano notes in empty rooms, the sudden warmth of sunlight on corners that had been dark, all fleeting, all gentle, all leaving a sense of calm wonder, as if her presence alone carried remnants of that dream space she had inhabited so fully. Over time, Eleanor began mentoring a small circle of students, people drawn to the mysteries of consciousness, the intersection of dreams and waking life, and her teaching was unique, almost ritualistic in its softness. She would ask them to sit silently, to breathe slowly, to close their eyes, and to focus on subtle sounds, the hum of the heater, the rustle of fabric, the tick of a clock, the barely audible whisper of wind. And then she would play the piano, letting her melodies float into the air, each note carrying not only music but fragments of her experience. And as the students listened, some would drift gently into sleep, reporting visions of gardens that bloomed with impossible geometry, rivers that carried light instead of water, and skies that hummed with colors they had no words for. A testament to Eleanor's extraordinary ability to translate the language of her dream life into sensations the waking world could perceive. Yet, despite the wonder of her abilities and the fascination of those around her, Eleanor remained humble, speaking softly of her journey, never claiming heroism, never dramatizing her experience, instead emphasizing the quiet lessons of patience, presence, and attentiveness to the small, often overlooked details of life. And she would say, "The world has a rhythm even when we are still, a music even when we are silent, and a story even when we can't remember it fully." Words that carried the resonance of someone who had truly understood the depths of time, consciousness, and the subtle spaces between sleep and wakefulness. In her private moments, Eleanor would often return to her journals, rereading entries she had written during her long slumber, marveling at her own ability to have perceived such complex landscapes with nothing but her mind and her dreaming spirit. And though she sometimes wept quietly for the lost years, she also smiled, knowing that she had been part of something extraordinary, a living testament to the mysteries of human consciousness, and that the echoes of those years would continue to ripple softly through her life, in her music, her teaching, her whispered words, and in the subtle way she moved through the world, attentive to the unseen and the unheard. In the evenings, when the sun dipped low and the sky became a deep, velvety blue, Eleanor would walk in her garden, feeling the damp earth beneath her feet, listening to the soft patter of evening rain or the rustle of leaves stirred by a gentle wind. And in those moments, she would sometimes close her eyes and imagine the friends she had met in that dream world, acknowledging them silently, feeling their presence like a warm, invisible hand guiding her. And though they were unreachable to anyone else, she felt their companionship as fully as if they had been sitting beside her for decades. Samuel would occasionally ask her to describe what she had seen in those years of sleep, and Eleanor would speak slowly, in whispers, describing floating staircases, rivers of light, gardens that responded to sound, skies that pulsed with unseen rhythms, voices that carried wisdom she could not fully comprehend, and the subtle sensation that she had been both observer and participant in a world beyond ordinary perception. And as she spoke, it became clear that her words carried power not because of their strangeness, but because of the calm, the gentle authority of someone who had seen the extraordinary without panic, who had endured silence without fear, and who had returned to the waking world with a profound sense of serenity. Neighbors and friends would sometimes report faint phenomena, subtle echoes of her experience, a soft melody floating from her home in the dead of night, a light flickering without cause, a whisper that seemed to follow them as they walked past her garden. And though Eleanor never confirmed or denied these accounts, she welcomed the quiet acknowledgement of the unseen, knowing that her life had become a bridge, a channel, a testament to the spaces between sleep and consciousness, and to the hidden beauty that patience and stillness can reveal. In her later years, she continued composing music, creating delicate, hypnotic pieces that invited listeners into a meditative state, pieces that seemed to weave together the textures of her long dream life with the cadence of the waking world. And in each note, in each pause, there was the subtle imprint of the 7 years she had spent beyond ordinary awareness, a quiet reminder that even in absence, the human mind can explore, endure, and ultimately return, carrying with it the gift of wonder, empathy, and profound peace. When she finally passed in her sleep, surrounded by family, friends, and the gentle cadence of her own compositions, there was a feeling in the room that transcended grief, a serene acknowledgement that Eleanor had completed her journey, both through the dream world and through life, leaving behind a legacy not only of music and whispered stories, but of the quiet, transformative power of stillness, of listening, of patience, and of the extraordinary beauty that can emerge when one allows themselves to truly inhabit the spaces between moments. And now, as you lay here tonight, let your mind drift, let your breath slow, and imagine Eleanor walking softly through her gardens of memory and dream, listening to the gentle hum of invisible rivers, touching flowers that respond to sound, smiling at companions only she can see, and carrying the subtle music of the world with her, teaching you, through her silence, that even in stillness there is movement, even in absence there is presence, and even in sleep there is a story that whispers softly, gently, inviting you to let go and join the calm of the night. And this is Whisper Sleep Studio, where forgotten stories breathe again, where the quiet hum of the world becomes a lullaby, and where your dreams are always welcome to wander as freely as Eleanor's once did.